I just want to start by thanking everyone for coming out tonight. This is more than I would have asked for. I know some people traveled halfway across the country to hear me speak, so hopefully I can impress my grandparents. It was the 6th day of our mountaineering expedition in northern Patagonia. We were out for 30 days, and the team of 14 students and 4 instructors woke at 1:30 a.m. It was a planned alpine start to make it over the pass. This pass, taken from the picture of the moraine in the glacier up towards the north corner, was at 6,000 feet. The ascent of the pass was roughly 2,000 feet of elevation gain over a couple miles, extremely steep, very laborious, heavy backpacks. Tired team, no breakfast, empty stomachs. A bunch of high school kids, not fed, not a lot of sleep. You can picture how the morning went. As soon as the travel began, things got hairy from the beginning. We started post-holing in snow up to our hips and continued over the pass, not doing much better than our waists. As soon as we got through the pass, we started post-holing to our chest and coming down into the moraine of the glacier. We found travel to be easier, but the sun was coming up and the winds were picking up as well. This picture here is one of the more beautiful pictures I've taken of the course in Patagonia. As we came down the pass and into the afternoon, we made a hot lunch, a rarity because we usually eat trail snacks. And after that, the wind started to pick up significantly. We experienced 40 mile an hour, 50 mile an hour, 60 mile an hour throughout the evening. Our pots and dry bags and backpacks were blowing away. I was even blown onto my bottom a couple times, moving from tent to tent, talking to instructors and student groups. And as soon as we bedded down for the evening, myself, my buddy Miles, and a gal named Arlie were in one tent, a mountaineering tent called Hilleberg's. Incredible tent. And we were experiencing 65, 70 mile an hour winds. Our anchors were not holding in the snow. Our tents were bending. And at about 1:30 a.m., my buddy Miles and I sat right up in the tent, and we started to hear the sidewall of the tent started to rip from the wind. And so you can imagine, say, like your raincoat or something where it's raining outside and you can go under the shelter, or like the body of a tent or something rips, or a zipper pole breaks or something. But 70 miles an hour, blowing snow, middle of the night. Everything's scarier at nighttime because you can't see more than your headlamp, as many of you know. And the tent started to rip and snow started to blow inside of our tent. With our negative 15 degree sleeping bags, it was not much help. We bundled up, went outside, and we figured, well, I guess before we went outside, my buddy Miles and I look across the tent at each other and we start laughing hysterically. Because at this point, it's our 6th day of the expedition and we have no idea what to do. And Knowles, the outdoor school that I took the program with, teaches this thing called tolerance for adversity and uncertainty. And we didn't really know what that meant until then. So that was a beautiful example of what that meant. So we went out, tried to stitch it up, did a pretty poor job, looked at it in the morning. We said, dang, we did pretty good in the middle of the night. And the winds were still really, really strong in the middle of the day. But we managed with sunlight. We could see more and felt more comfortable. So that was a little intro to my mountaineering section of my last semester. I guess I'll start with my story. So throughout middle school, I found an interest in the outdoors, hiking, backpacking, out west in the Rockies. And then I got into fly fishing about 7 years ago, and that turned my interest into more fly fishing and backpacking, and I found this whole new passion for the outdoors and a whole new passion for conservation. I was like, wow, all this stuff is so cool. Like, there's so many places and all around this world you can do this stuff, and so many different groups. And then I was like traveling throughout high school, and I went to Peru and Brazil and all throughout Central America, primarily working with service groups down there. I was like, wow, I really love to travel. I really love being outside and learning in sort of a structured environment, but the liberty to fail and liberty to succeed. And I was like, I'll do Knowles. And a background on Knowles. Knowles is an outdoor school, and they operate all around the world, and they do week-long to semester-long to year-long courses, anywhere from Patagonia to India, Central America, Baja, northern BC, Alaska, Russia, all over the globe. And so I was like, yeah, I'm going to do a gap year, and I'm going to spend 1 semester in Patagonia. And I was like, screw it. I'll do 2 semesters, 1 in Patagonia and a spring semester in the Rockies. And at the time, that was a big commitment, as you probably know. 2 semesters, studying outside with the school, living in a tent. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into, and this is before I left for Patagonia. And so I was like, wow, this first semester will be crazy. I'm not sure. I'm really excited to meet these new people and these new instructors and figure out what this whole Knowles thing is about and see what I can learn from it. And so I ventured down to Patagonia, just a kid in a backpack, excited, nervous, don't really know what's going to happen, right? And I get there and I'm blown away by the vastness of this place. I'm blown away by this organization and how they do their work. It's me, a backpack, and a little fly rod, and I'm like, what am I going to pull from this semester? And we embark on this expedition, the 30-month mountaineering expedition. And we get to the first camp, and it's blowing sideways rain. And being from Iowa, that's like sort of a thing, but with like 0.5 millimeter lightweight tarp, it's like, this is absurd. And I have a Gore-Tex raincoat between me and all my puffy layers. And I'm like, I hope this thing holds. Like, I have no idea what this is worth right now. And the first night was okay. Throughout the expedition, we were, I don't have any other words than brutalized by weather conditions. Snow travel was extremely difficult, as I talked about in my first story. Yeah, it was incredible. The views were insane and extremely big. And I have to say that when I was down there in the mountaineering expedition, that was the first time where I've felt place and perspective in the world, I guess. And some people travel to the Midwest or out west in the Rockies and they say, wow, this place is so big. And I was so fortunate to travel throughout high school. And then I get to Patagonia and I'm like, I look at this place, this is later in the course, and I look at these snowy mountains and these beautiful peaks and these raging winds and this sideways snow, and I'm like, this is the smallest I've ever felt, right? And this is like living in this tent with these people from all over the world. This is some sort of social experiment, and this is like the craziest thing I've ever done, and I feel so small right now. And so throughout the rest of the mountaineering expedition, I did a little bit of more reflection on why I'm here and what I want to learn. And then the mountaineering expedition ended with a 3-day ISGE, is what Knowles calls it. It's an independent student group expedition. And so our 14 students split up into 3 groups. And I was the leader of one expedition. My buddy Sam was the leader of another. And a gal named Emma was the leader of the 3rd expedition. And so the goal of my group was to travel over a couple passes, see this alpine lake, and then back into town. And being the leader, I was confident in my leadership skills, and my students elected me to be their leader. So I was like, wow, this is really an amazing opportunity. I can't wait to hopefully impress these people and get them to town safely. And what I found was that it was extremely easy to lead a group of people in this sort of environment, even with the conditions and everything that was happening around us and the overall fear and nervousness of things going sideways, which is extremely easy. It all went super smooth. And the thing I realized about it was I wasn't even leading the people were leading themselves. And that was interesting when you think about it, is everyone has become so competent to a point where the leader only gives them maybe a map briefing and a time to go to bed. And then it's just like a personal trip, right? It's just like people going hiking, and it just goes super smooth, which was a weight off my shoulders and a wonderful experience. After the mountaineering expedition, we transitioned to the sea kayak for a month. And the sea kayak was something that I've never done before. I've done like a little canoeing and flat water kayaking, but nothing like being in these Patagonian canals and the open sea and the salt water in this 20-foot boat with another person. And it was honestly incredible, and I look back on it and it's probably one of the best things I've ever done. Yeah, so sea kayaking for a month. The student group and the instructors planned our expedition so we would travel down these canals through a portage and to a glacier called Bernardo Glacier, one of the more beautiful places I've ever been. And I'll start with a couple of stories from the sea kayaking expedition. So the expedition starts with a 6-hour boat ride. I guess this is a better picture. A 6-hour boat ride on a boat that looks like that through the open ocean of Patagonia with raging winds and turbulent water. And if you see here, these are our kayaks strapped to the top of the boat with a couple cam straps and bungee straps. And the captain of the boat thought it was fine, and it ended up being okay. It was 6 hours in that boat to Punta Raquel, where we got dropped off. That was where we spent the first couple of days learning how to maneuver the sea kayak and packing it and unpacking it, figuring out all the logistics, doing map briefing. Learning how to live on the sea is just a whole different realm from mountaineering, I would say. And so the first couple days were smooth, 6 miles, 12 miles, 13 miles of travel in the sea. Pretty self-explanatory, pretty easy. We get to a portage called Paso del Indio. And if you know anything about Spanish or Latin, Indio is some derivative of Indians. And so as we were portaging, the portage is this really big beach, and then it funnels into this like super tight corridor through the jungle. And out through the other side is a canal to the other islands and some ridiculous stuff. And so we get to the portage and we're all geared up and we're like, all right, we're going to crack this in one day. We're going to move all our personal gear and then we're going to tow the boats through. And we were like, we're going to do it. We're so excited. No way. We get to the portage, we haul our personal gear through waist-high mud. We drop it a mile away, halfway through the portage, and we come back and we're like, we're just going to call it a day here. We pitch the tents on the beach. Next morning we wake up and it's downpouring rain, like the heaviest rain throughout the mountaineering expedition does not even come close to this rain. Our kayaks are filled with water from the rain. We dump them out. 4 people do a kayak and we haul them through the jungle up these big steps and waist-high mud. And this is when it got really real, the expedition. Like it hasn't already, right? Yeah, sure. My bad. Excuse me. And so once we finish the portage, it's a couple 20-mile days and a 30-mile day and a couple 10-mile days to the glacier. And I was fortunate enough to be the designated leader the day that we arrived at the glacier. The water was crystal clear and smooth. Everything went well. Sea kayak travel is interesting. It's so variable on the weather and the conditions and the sea state. A little bit of wind, a little bit of clouds can change everything. And granted, Patagonia is the extreme opposite of weather patterns that we experience in the United States, and where the weather that comes off the ocean hits the mountains at extreme speeds and changes everything in 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 10 minutes even. And so that was firsthand experienced, extremely exposed with tents and tarps is all we had for protection. And yeah, the weather is crazy down there. So this is a picture of the Bernardo Glacier the evening we arrived. Again, like I stated, probably the most beautiful place I've ever been. It took 76 miles in a sea kayak one way to get through here. One portage, a couple of small other portages, and really long days on the water. As soon as we got here, we took 5 days of rest on the expedition. We were brutalized, tired, hungry, beaten, blistered, pretty much everything, sunburnt. Yeah, and the day we hiked to the glacier was insane. Bernardo Glacier is one of the only tidewater glaciers in the region, and so we were extremely fortunate that day to have clear skies, and we viewed the glacier with something like that, and it was beautiful. That's my friend Mariella. She's a middle-aged woman from Patagonia. She's a photographer, incredible lady. Yeah, one of my better friends from the expedition. Beautiful place again. And that was about halfway through our sea kayaking expedition. So after that, we had to turn around and go back. The 20-mile days, the 10-mile days, the portages, all that. We were only halfway done. Yeah, right, halfway done. And after that, after the month of sea kayaking, we were like, wow, that was crazy. I'm glad we're through with it. Beautiful. I learned so much. And then we transitioned into the ISGE extended version, and it was a 10-day student-led expedition where there were two groups of students. My buddy Sam led one group, and I led the next group of 8 students. And this was 10 days of me being the leader, which was more of a burden than the last time, but also I knew that I had the confidence and the competence to lead a group with my skill. And me and 8 other students embarked on a hiking trip through northern Patagonia to visit San Lorenzo and all these other beautiful places. And it went super smoothly, and it was like the most incredible 8 days of leading and backpacking and sightseeing, I guess you could call it, that we experienced. The weather was beautiful. The sun was out all the time. I remember running out of sunscreen on day 6 and picking from other people the rest of the course, which they did not like. And then, because you know me, fair skin, I take like half the bottle in one swipe, right? And so after that, after we finished the ISGE, that was it for Patagonia. That was the semester in like 20 minutes. Patagonia was incredible. And then I headed home to this lovely city, Des Moines. And I went skiing with my family for Christmas. That is not Des Moines. I went, contrary to popular belief, I skied with my family for Christmas, hung out a little bit. And after Patagonia, I had this feeling of like, wow. I don't know if any of you played high school sports or college sports, but there was this feeling of like being burnt out. And this feeling of like, wow, I had this incredible experience, and I slept in a tent and made all these good meals and made extremely good friends and these incredible memories. And I was like, I don't really want to do it again. And yeah, as funny as it sounds, it was like, I was like, well, I signed up for these 2 semesters before I'd even embarked on one. I was like, well, I'm probably in over my head anyways, but I'm going to do it. And then at Christmas time, came along and I was like, I don't really know. I don't know if I want to do it. I'm impartial to it. And then I'd spent more time in the front country cooking on a conventional oven and like all the shower. And I was like, wow, this is like such a different life. And then February came around and I was like, oh, I want to go back so bad. And so I went back and I did my spring semester with Knowles in the Rockies. And there we were based out of Lander, Wyoming. So close to Jackson Hole, like 3 hours away. And spring semester started off with 13 days of backcountry skiing and ski touring, which was like right in my realm of capability. I love to ski. I do it quite a bit outside of the school. I ski with my family in Montana every winter, twice a winter, I guess. And super fortunate to start this section with skiing. I was fresh off skis from Montana, and I was like, wow, this is going to be crazy. I've winter camped a little bit before, but this is like an extreme. And I ordered my negative 30 degree rated sleeping bag, and I was like, I'm gonna be doing this for real. And so we strapped our sleds on with all our stuff, and we toured through the mountains for 13 days. And the weather was really bad. But if you think about it in terms of skiing, it was really good. And so we got like two and a half, it's weird how it flips from like crazy rain to a bunch of snow. And we got like 2.5 feet of snow in 2 weeks, and every line I skied, I was getting hit in the face with powder. And it was like, for someone who skis, and I'm sure most of you do, it was like incredible, right? The skiing, the touring, the views like this. This was on my way to go to the bathroom one morning, which is a different story. But that's like one of our skin tracks to go to the bathroom. And Jackson Hole is 30 miles out that way, and we are in the middle of nowhere. Beautiful, right? Like pillowy lines and deep snow. And throughout the winter section, one of the more fun things we did was we slept in quigloos, which are like a sort of like an igloo sort of thing, where we'd first stomp out like a big circle with our skis, and then we'd put a probe, like an avalanche probe, in the middle, and we'd start piling snow like 8-10 feet high. And then we'd have a student that would be the mole, like dig down from the top of the quigloo and then dig it out. And so we would sleep in there, because the days that we'd travel to, like the dig-in sites is what we called them, we'd sleep in these little flies, like that kind of tent, right? Or it's called a Megamid. It's made by Black Diamond. I've spent a lot of time in a Megamid. Don't really want to spend any more time in a Megamid. So something like that is what we slept in. Got down to negative degrees in the winter, blowing snow, extremely cold. And we got in these quigloos and slept, and it was like sleeping in a house, sleeping in a bed. It was like so warm and pleasant until it collapsed on you, and you had to dig yourself out, and then you had to go build another one, which was a different story. But yeah, the winter section was incredible. Skiing was incredible. Yeah, I love skiing, and the snow was deep, so it was a recipe for greatness. And then we transitioned into 24 days of canyoneering, which I had done backpacking, which was on the list of things to do, but I'd never done like technical canyoneering before, right? And you see pictures in like the Keen magazine or the Arc'teryx magazine or the REI magazine, and these people like squeezing their bodies through cracks and in really cold water, and then doing like all this cool rappelling stuff. And it was like exactly what it was put out to be. And so we backpacked for 24 days, and we hiked through beautiful places like this, southern Utah, right? That's Jacob's Chair is what that rock is called, if you're curious. And so beautiful landscapes like this. I'll start with the story on the third day of the canyoneering expedition. We couldn't find water in the morning. We couldn't find water in the afternoon. We were in probably 8 miles on a really rugged road. And we were 12 miles into the day, and we dropped our packs at a place called Secret Springs. And apparently later, knowing that our instructor pulled out Google Earth and looked and saw there was a spring there, or else, yeah, we still would have looked for water. But looking for water is something that gave me extreme anxiety in a place like this, where the activities that I do, I'm always surrounded by water, and it's just always there. Like the things that I'm after are in the water, right? Like trout and permit and bonefish and all that stuff. And so it's like, oh, the water, but I'm after the fish. And here it's like you're looking for holes in the ground, like 6 inches to feet wide of water. Like you need water to survive, right? You all know this. And so we were looking for water to cook and drink, and we couldn't find it. And we found it, and we were like, oh my gosh, water. And the day wasn't done there. We experienced rain in the desert in May, or in, I guess, March. And to preface that, our instructor had made a serious statement of, it doesn't rain in the desert. And so we were like, we're fine. I'm not even going to bring rain pants. I'm just going to bring a raincoat. We'll bring the Megamids. Like, we'll sleep outside the whole course. And we sleep outside, having set up our Megamids, but we sleep outside on this big rock, and we start feeling like small sprinkles on our face. It's like 1:30 a.m. So small sprinkles, and then we like pack up our stuff and move to the tents, and then it's like it starts raining like pretty hard, not like Patagonia hard, which is I've grown to know on a spectrum of like sprinkle to like really, really hard. And so it's like raining hard, like it's starting to bleed through the Megamid, and we're like, okay, this is pretty serious. And then it starts to snow, and we were like, oh, whoa now. And so it starts snowing, right? Like huge flakes, like inch-wide flakes. And the wind picks up, and we drop the pole in the Megamid. The Megamid's like a four-sided, like super thin circus tent that fits 4 people. And so we drop the pole, and we're like sleeping with the fly, like bashing the back of our heads. And we're like, this is gonna be a long night. It's only like 3:30, and it's snowing like crazy. And our anchors are coming down outside the Megamid, and we're like, oh my gosh, we're just gonna wait it out, and we'll see. And I was in a Megamid with my buddy Liam and a gal named Claire. And Claire and I wake up to having to search for Liam outside the Megamid. Liam is buried in snow over there, like in his sleeping bag, like covered in snow. And we're like, Liam! We're like digging him out, like, come here, come here. And the weather is like, it is just brutal, like snow in the desert, slippery rocks, everything. Everything could go wrong, went wrong. And that was day 3 of the canyoneering expedition. And so, yeah, we went into the next 21 days expecting that nothing else could go as bad as that. And thankfully it did. We experienced a little bit more rain and extremely high winds, but nothing extremely terrible, I guess. And so canyoneering expedition continued with more slot canyons, which are, again, these like little pieces of rock you have to slide yourself in, and extremely cold water, rappelling hundreds of feet to get down into these canyons, which was so fun. Yeah, it's like being at the climbing gym, except you're like on real rock and controlling your speed, and rappelling off of these anchors with a wire gate that's like taped shut. Our instructor was like a competent climber, but not a competent canyoneer, and so we took a couple of risks. But imagine your regular like carabiner, right? Like non-locking wire gate is what they're called, and taking first aid tape and wrapping it so it doesn't open on you when you're rappelling. And so we found ourselves in shortage of locking carabiners to a point where we had to first aid tape our wire gates to rappel off of, which is something I would not do. Extremely sketchy because you're loading it with 10 students and 2 instructors and extremely heavy backpacks. And so, yeah, that's me. 6th day of the canyoneering expedition. We were psyched for that for sure. Long canyoneering expedition ahead of us. Minimal water. We had a couple days without water, which was pretty intense. I learned a lot from those moments on how a team can react to adversity and how I react to adversity and how we overcome that and I guess find water, right? So after that, we moved into the rock climbing section, and that took place in Red Rocks right outside of Las Vegas, Nevada. You picture Las Vegas as like MGM Grand and the big waterfalls. And we were 15 minutes away in this like dusty campground, people living out of their vans, like dirtbag climber paradise. And we were just like right in with them, like dusty, cooking on little camp stoves. And this was like probably my favorite section of the semester. I rock climb quite a bit in my free time, and climbing on real rock in Red Rocks, which is world famous for incredible sport routes and multi-pitch trad routes, was incredible, and I thank Knowles for the opportunity to climb at Red Rocks. And throughout that, we developed skills on rappelling and anchor building and movement on the wall and all that good stuff. That was super fun. I drank a lot of LaCroix. We did have coolers. I'm big into LaCroix. And then after the rock climbing section, we only had one more section left, and this started the end of April, going into the beginning of May, was the river section. And so the expedition was set with 10 students and 4 instructors with 2 20-foot rafts and 10 kayaks. And it was the whitewater kayaking section in a place called Desolation Canyon, southern Utah, just north of Moab by a couple hours. And we got to Desolation Canyon at the put-in. We didn't really know what to expect at a place called Sandwash. It's about an hour drive downhill down this super bumpy, steep gravel road, like overhanging cliffs and stuff, pretty sketchy. And we get to the put-in, we're like, we don't really know what to expect. It's our last section, it'll go by fast. We want to just hang out with our people. And whitewater kayaking is something that you need to be fully attentive to at all times, because if you don't and you're not aware on how to operate your boat, or you don't know how to pull your skirt, you could definitely die. And yeah, I guess running the rafts was easy. We loaded the rafts with all the personal gear and the big coolers and stuff like that. And running the kayak was pretty difficult. Again, I'd done like flat water kayaking, but never something like class 2, class 3, class 4 whitewater rapids with a bunch of other students, like just learning how to paddle and move your hips in the kayak. And it was just like so intriguing, and you could learn so much from it, but at the same time it's like so dangerous, right? You get to a point where like, oh, I want to crush this rapid, and it's like, oh, I hope I don't flip over or anything, because I don't really want to go for a swim when there's that like super cut in rock over there. I could get foot jammed and I could get pushed under and I couldn't breathe again, right? And so there's like a super gray area of like going for it super hard and just like putting your head down into these waves, and then like, no, I'm just gonna walk it. And we experienced that firsthand. We walked a couple class 3 and class 4 rapids that were totally out of our realm. And I got really big into rowing the oar rig, the big heavy raft, primarily because of the reason of possible death. I'm a young kid. I have a whole life ahead of me. Yeah, I've got cool stuff to do in the summer and the winter, and we were talked to by the instructors on like the 3rd or 4th day of running this class 3 rapid and getting talked to about foot jamming, which is extremely scary to even talk about. But if you say are in a big rapid and roll your kayak, you're underneath the water, your kayak's above you, and you either know how to roll your kayak back onto its upward side, or you pull your spray skirt. And at that time you push yourself out of your kayak, and now you and your kayak are separated, and you're swimming, right? You're like swimming for a rock or swimming for a bank or looking for a rope that an instructor would throw you. And if none of those things are there, you're just like trying to get out of the rapid. And if you don't swim correctly in whitewater, you don't have your feet up, and then you jam your feet to a point where you'd be standing like bent down by the amount of water coming over you with your feet stuck in the rock. And I asked the instructors one day just alone, I was like, what's the probability of you getting someone out alive from a foot jam? And they was like, probably 1 or 2 out of 10. And I was like, really? And then I thought about it, and I was like, oh, for sure. Like, they're stuck underwater with their feet jammed, and all you can pull on is their life jacket, and it's like the water is just like cranking over their back. And you're like in there too, right? And Knowles teaches this thing about, is the scene safe? Like, put yourself first. And if these people are jammed in the middle of the rapid, they're not going to go out there and try and save them, right? As brutal as that sounds, it's like sort of an Everest rules kind of thing. It was just this like scary part of being in the outdoors I'd never been introduced to. Like, carry a bear spray and do all this good stuff and you'll be all right. And it was like death. And I was like, oh, pass. I'm not into that. So I stayed like rowing the oar rig, which was super fun. And I was like, I'm not really into death, so I'm gonna pass. And all the other students were like, it's not a big deal. I came here to push myself. And I'm like, dude, death trumps being pushed, all right? Like, you gotta understand that like doing this rapid is way less important than what you have to do in a couple weeks with your family or college. And they were like, nah. I'm just mad at the instructors that they walked us in these rapids. I just want to do every rapid, and I was like, yo, you gotta calm down. Luckily, we didn't have any death, so that was good. But yeah, just public service announcement: be careful whitewater kayaking. Go with people who know what they're doing. Wear a PFD and a helmet. Know how to swim in whitewater. Just be careful, because the power of rivers are extremely dangerous, and they're not to be second guessed. Yeah, that's all I have to say about that. Yeah, so that wrapped up my spring semester in the Rockies. That totaled 181 days in the field for me over the past year. I have to say that's probably the most time I'll spend in the backcountry total in probably the rest of my life. I won't spend 90 consecutive days, and I won't spend half a year in the backcountry ever again. I don't think, at least, unless I do another crazy something or other. But yeah, I learned so much about leadership and self-leadership and working extremely hard and motivating people to work as hard as me. Some about school, like skill development, and a bunch of stuff, how to do stuff safely in the outdoors. Yeah, I'd say that, I guess, like, speaking to you young gals over there, if you're interested in doing an outdoor program or something that involves a gap year, I'd say dive right in. I'm not in a hurry to finish school, and so I'd say, I guess if you're interested in doing a gap year or something, I'd say, like, go for it. Like, do NOLS or do an outdoor school or travel and do stuff outside. It's like you can benefit so much from it, and you learn a ton, and you have fun doing it, right? Like, it's pretty fun stuff. So I guess wrapping up my gap year experience, and rewinding a little bit. Like I said earlier, I love to fly fish. I love to be outside. I started fly fishing 6 years ago. My first time was out in Montana on the South Fork of the Gallatin River. We were catching pretty small to 17-inch cutthroat trout, and my dad took me with a buddy named Chance. He part-times as a professional snowboarder and part-times fly fishing guide, so yeah, he lives a pretty sweet life. But yeah, he don't really do much other else than that. But yeah, fly fishing is super cool. I love it. Personally, it's something that I see myself doing for the rest of my life. Yeah, Chance was a big mentor for me, like getting into the fly fishing community and skill development and stuff like that. My dad, out west is this crazy place with blue ribbon trout streams and big fish. It's like 16 to 20-inch fish are like candy bars out there, right? It's like absurd compared to what you can do here. My buddy Kevin back there, Kevin Hansen, he's also a big mentor of mine. Raise your hand, Kevin. Sorry to embarrass you or something, but he's been a big mentor of mine, like growing up and fly fishing and showing me around Iowa and the Driftless area. Yeah, you've meant a lot to me, so thank you for that. Yeah, thanks, dude. Yeah, and then I started fly fishing, and then I started documenting these trips and these experiences and this travel, like little essay journals, stuff you'd write for high school classes and little stuff like that in a notebook. And then I was like, I want to make this somewhat official, and so I started a blog called The Angler's Hatch. It's an online website I still run today, and it just started as a blog, right, where I would just like write about tying flies or catching fish and traveling out west. And at the time, I didn't really know what it meant, right? Like the Angler's Hatch, yeah, that has a nice ring to it. Like, it makes sense. The angler, bugs hatching. And then I found this reason, like I was on the river one day and I was like, this is like a magical story, right? And it kind of just came to me, and I was like, the Angler's Hatch. And so if you know anything about rivers or freestone streams or fly fishing, bugs that live, well, there's water column to the river, correct? And bugs that live on the bottom of the surface either stay on the bottom or they move through the water columns to the surface, right? Also known as phases of their life, or the hatch that they move through. And so I was like, wow, the hatch, okay, bugs, the angler, and then I was like, I'm getting somewhere, and I was like, the Angler's Hatch, all right, boom. And so I took it to this whole new direction of hatching as a person. And take it how you want it, but I consider myself an angler, and I'm consistently hatching, right? I'm always growing, I'm always learning, I'm always fishing, I'm always catching different fish, I'm always learning how to do things differently, and so I'm always hatching like bugs in the stream, right? And they go through different phases of their life, and they learn different things, and they either get eaten or they continue, and then they lay eggs, and then more bugs move through that process. And it's an incredibly interesting cycle. And yeah, I'd say that I'm hatching too, right, with my gap year and this small business that I started a couple years ago. I guess, yeah, take it how you want it, but I think everyone hatches in a certain way. And they move through phases of their life, and they experience different things. And yeah, it's something that I'm pretty proud of that I came up with. And I started it 3 years ago, and I've been running with it ever since. And it means a lot to me. The blog started 2-3 years ago, and I still write today. I love writing. I'm thinking about majoring in journalism or something like that. Maybe writing a book in the future. But yeah, the Anglers Hatch, and that was like a big thing for me. I was a freshman going into my sophomore year in high school, and I was like, well, I figured out the real meaning of this thing, and I was like, what can I do, right? Entrepreneurs out there all over the world and in this city as well, they say, boy, I've got this idea. What can I do with it? How can I make it better? Like, how can I promote it? And so I dove like super deep into the analytics of running a business and like all this incredible stuff. And I was like blown away by the realm of entrepreneurship and what you can do with an idea, right? So moving along, I guess Iowa, right? Pretty cool spot we live in, huh? You can do a lot here. The city's pretty cool. Up north is pretty cool too. Northeastern Iowa, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois make up this region called the Driftless. It's where the glacier sort of, kind of, not really went through millions of years ago, and creates these big bluffs and these incredible streams and these big pastures. Yeah, look up pictures of it. It's beautiful. The map of it's on my new shirts. It's a piece of me, right? I grew up in Iowa. I've fished there all my life. Yeah, some days I don't want to fish anywhere else. It's been one of the more rewarding places. I've learned so much from it about fishing and about myself and what I love to do. Yeah, I love fishing. Yeah. Yeah, there's not much I can say else about that. Yeah, I love taking photos of fly fishermen. That's Kevin again. We did a trip to southeastern Missouri in Montauk State Park 3 years ago maybe. And yeah, Kevin hooks up on big fish, so I gotta take a couple pictures, right? And yeah, super fun. It's this whole different world of like being outside and hiking, I guess. And then fly fishing is like you're interacting with this whole different part of the world and the water systems and how the water works and like how the whole world works. You can combine like fly fishing with backpacking and do high country alpine trips I've done with my cousin Avery out in Colorado. That's super fun stuff. And speaking on like beautiful places, I guess I want to talk about like conserving these places. I think that's a big thing that us as citizens of the United States and all around the world, we can focus on right now. I guess, yeah, like the places we spend time in outside are beautiful, right? Like places that I've shown you here and places that you've been and all over the United States and all over the world. They're all worth protecting, I think. These places are beautiful. They were at the beginning of the earth, right? And they have existed ever since. And some of them are diminishing, like the glaciers and lakes and stuff like that. They're going away and they're melting, and maybe hundreds of years, thousands, millions of years, they'll be gone. And that just marks a piece of history and the earth, I guess. But all these places and all these organizations are like trying to protect and preserve these beautiful places. The Nature Conservancy, they're promoted on like backcountry.com when you check out, or like all over the web and all over the world. I think you should donate to the Nature Conservancy. They do incredible stuff. And I think, like, going back to my main point of like these places are worth protecting, and everyone spends time in these places and they spend time in the backcountry, And yeah, if you love it, you should conserve them so you can spend more time. There's also a thing called leave no trace. There are 7 principles to leave no trace. And I think those are something that I abide by in the backcountry, stuff that keeps the backcountry cleaner and safer, and stuff that preserves the environment. Trout Unlimited is a worldwide thing, popular in the US for preserving fisheries. Something I can attest to a little bit more. I'm a donator and a member of Trout Unlimited, and I think they do really good stuff. They clean up streams in Iowa, and they clean up all around the West and the East Coast, and they do good stuff, yeah. They're trying to gain support right now. Yeah, the current administration is not helping, I say. So, I mean, support these people. Like, they do really good work, and they preserve these places that we love to spend time in. And I don't think there's a lot else you could do, but starting small with a couple dollars and like a note and a membership, it really helps, right? A couple dollars can turn nothing into something. And so I think like preserving these places that we call home and that we call beautiful, right, are like so worth it. I think to me, it's something that I'll continue to do for the rest of my life. I'll fight for these places because they're just so beautiful, and I love to spend time in them. Yeah, I guess wrapping things up, this is a picture of northeastern Iowa. As you can see, the big bluffs and the prairie, the river. It's a beautiful spot. This is the driftless region like I talked about. Something that's like become a part of my soul in a way, right? I'm sure you all spend time in the outdoors where you were like, wow, this place is like so incredible, it means so much to me. And then it somehow becomes a piece of you, right? And it's like something that you think about and you like take with you and you tell other people about, and then they're inspired. And so I encourage people to do that too, is like find a place that means something to you and tell more people about it. That's pretty significant. And yeah, so the Driftless, pretty beautiful spot. Yeah, that's kind of all I have to talk about. Thanks to everyone for coming out. I appreciate the support.